Sean Daniels built his empire through fear and silence, but when Conor McKenna sent Serbian hitman Nikola Vuko to Marbella, the game changed, and the king of the streets was no longer untouchable. Sean Daniels was once a name whispered in fear across Manchester. His rise through the criminal ranks had been fast, ruthless, and calculated. By his early 30s, he had carved out a territory that no rival dared to challenge. He dealt in drugs, guns, protection, and intimidation. His hands never got dirty, others did the work for him. But everyone knew who called the shots. The police launched investigation after investigation, but nothing stuck. Daniels was smart, always staying 2 steps ahead. Until one day, the streets turned cold. An internal betrayal forced Daniels to go underground. A lieutenant in his crew, hungry for control, flipped to law enforcement and handed over partial intel. It wasn't enough for a conviction, but it was enough to make Daniels vulnerable. Not long after, he narrowly escaped a late-night ambush outside a nightclub. A week later, his car was rigged with explosives. Both attempts failed, but the message was clear: someone wanted him dead. Daniels didn't wait around to find out who succeeded next. Then, just like that, he vanished. One night he was seen at a Manchester casino, and the next morning he was gone. His businesses shut down, his allies scrambled. Some claimed he had been killed and buried without a trace. Others believed he had left the game behind, living quietly somewhere no one would think to look. It would take years before the truth surfaced. Sean Daniels had fled to Spain. Marbella, on the southern coast, is known for its sunny beaches and luxury villas. But beneath its glamorous exterior, the city has long been a magnet for international criminals seeking to hide in plain sight. British gangsters, Eastern European cartels, and North African traffickers all found a home there. Daniels fit right in. Using a forged passport under the name Stephen Conway, he bought a hillside mansion, secured fake business credentials, and slipped into the city's criminal undercurrent. But he had learned from his past mistakes. Daniels avoided flashy behavior. He dressed like a wealthy retiree, not a crime lord. He moved discreetly, keeping a small inner circle. He didn't trust anyone for long. Money flowed through his accounts, laundered through real estate, nightclubs, and cryptocurrency schemes. From Marbella, Daniels ran a quiet but profitable empire. No violence, no street turf wars, just silent transactions and untraceable profits. It seemed like he had found the perfect exile. Over time, however, Daniels began to relax. The constant paranoia that once kept him alive started to fade. He reduced his security. He took walks without protection. He joined a local golf club. He began thinking about life beyond crime. He even considered investing in legitimate businesses. But while Daniels had moved on, his enemies had not. Back in Dublin, the McKenna brothers had never forgiven him. Years ago, Daniels had worked with them on a weapons shipment that went wrong. 2 of their cousins were arrested, and the McKennas believed Daniels tipped off the authorities to save himself. For a long time, they searched for him in vain. But Marbella is a small city for those who know where to look. Eventually, a picture surfaced online. A real estate magazine had featured a businessman named Stephen Conway hosting a charity event. The photo was grainy, but to the McKennas, the face was unmistakable. Daniels had been found. The wheels of revenge began to turn. Quietly, deliberately, the McKennas reached out to contacts in Spain, and a surveillance operation was launched. A man named Rafael Mendez, familiar with the criminal networks of Costa del Sol, was hired to confirm the identity. It didn't take long. Daniels still had the same walk, the same habits, and the same arrogance that made him a target years ago. The McKennas had waited a long time for this moment. Now that Daniels had resurfaced, they wanted the job done publicly. Not just to settle a score, but to send a message to every criminal who thought they could run, hide, and live in comfort. Daniels believed he had outsmarted the game, but Marbella wasn't his sanctuary anymore. It had become the stage for his downfall. Rafael Mendez had spent his life in the shadows of Marbella's criminal underbelly. He wasn't flashy, and he wasn't violent. He was useful. For the right price, he'd watch, report, and disappear. He knew who came into the city and who left. He had contacts in the local police, hotel staff, and even private security firms. When the McKenna brothers reached out, Rafael didn't ask many questions. They sent a payment and an old photograph. The man in the picture had aged, but the sharp eyes and square jaw were still recognizable. Raphael was told only one thing: confirm if the man known locally as Stephen Conway was actually the exiled crime boss Sean Daniels. Raphael began his routine surveillance. He used a rented van parked 2 streets away from Daniels' villa. With long-range cameras, he captured photos of every movement. He watched Daniels walk his dog early in the mornings, often without security. He tracked his visits to a quiet beach cafe where he met 2 other men weekly, both of them likely money handlers or brokers. Daniels had become a creature of routine, and routine makes people vulnerable. Raphael noticed the man never carried a weapon and often spent hours at a time outside, unguarded. For a man with enemies, Daniels seemed unaware of just how exposed he truly was. Within a week, Raphael was certain. The face, the walk, even the way he adjusted his cufflinks, it was Sean Daniels. He sent encrypted updates to the McKennas along with time-stamped photographs. There was no question now the ghost of Manchester's streets was alive and comfortable under the Spanish sun. The McKennas responded quickly. They were not interested in kidnapping or negotiation. They wanted a message sent, and for that they brought in a name that made even Raphael uneasy: Nicola Vuko. Nicola had no social media presence, no paper trail, and no criminal record. Yet in whispered circles, his name carried weight. Originally from Serbia, Nicola was known as a contract killer, who specialized in high-profile removals. He worked quietly, cleanly, and without unnecessary bloodshed. He didn't need teams or backup, just a target and the right environment. He arrived in Spain under a false identity, blending in as a tourist. Raphael met him once, for less than 10 minutes. Nicola asked only for surveillance details, entry points, and escape routes. There was no small talk, no questions about payment. The job had already been accepted. Nicola spent the next 3 days trailing Daniels on his own. He used local gym memberships, cafe seating, and hotel rooftops to track him. Daniels lived as though the world had forgotten him. He took leisurely drives through Marbella's scenic roads. He dined outdoors. He smiled at strangers. It became clear to Nicola that this man had grown too soft for the life he once ruled. That made the job easier, but it also made Nicola suspicious. Killers prefer predictability, but Daniels' openness felt almost unnatural. Then something unexpected happened. Daniels received an anonymous message, a simple, cryptic warning: they know where you are. How it reached him remains unclear. Some believe it came from a former UK associate who caught wind of the contract. Others suspect Raphael, perhaps feeling a twinge of guilt, had leaked it anonymously. Whatever the case, the effect was immediate. Daniels changed. He cancelled his public appearances. He doubled his security detail. He started traveling in tinted vehicles. Most notably, he reconnected with an old associate, Tariq El Amin, a Moroccan arms dealer known for his violent loyalty. Within 24 hours, 2 of Tariq's men were stationed at Daniels' villa. Both were armed, ex-military, and trained for high-threat situations. Daniels returned to his guarded habits, but it was already too late. Nicola had everything he needed. Nicola didn't panic. He adjusted. He knew Daniels was scared now. That fear would make him cautious, but it would also make him predictable. Nicola knew the most dangerous moment would be during transition between homes, between meetings, when Daniels felt safest under the illusion of protection. He bided his time, watching, waiting, and analyzing the small details that others missed. To the people of Marbella, life moved on in the sun-drenched streets. But beneath the calm, a silent hunt had begun. Raphael, now caught between 2 dangerous sides, debated whether to run or stay. Nicola, silent and calm, watched from the shadows, and Sean Daniels, unknowingly marked, was living on borrowed time. Nicola Vuko was a man who didn't need motivation. He operated on discipline, calculation, and efficiency. Once the contract was accepted, emotion had no place. The McKenna brothers wanted Sean Daniels eliminated not just with precision, but with symbolism. They didn't want a quiet disappearance or a car explosion. They wanted a spectacle, a hit carried out in public to strip Daniels of his myth and legacy. The message was clear. No matter how far he ran, the streets remembered, and so did those left behind. After the warning Daniels received, Nicola knew the clock had started ticking. The element of surprise was damaged but not lost. Daniels was rattled, which meant he would overcorrect. Paranoia would replace logic. Already his security had changed. The 2 Moroccan guards now traveled with him everywhere. Routes were altered, schedules disrupted, but Nicola was not frustrated. He studied the new patterns the way a chess player studies a reshuffled board. Every move had its counter. Every shift revealed new opportunities. One of those opportunities came on a Wednesday. Daniels had cancelled a scheduled yacht club visit due to concerns over visibility, but resumed the meeting 3 days later. Nicola noted it carefully. The meeting was held in an upscale open-air restaurant near the marina. Daniels arrived with both guards, entered through the front, sat at the same table, and conducted business for approximately 40 minutes. The second time, the pattern repeated. Nicola now had a window, a crowded place, a predictable schedule, and a level of comfort returning to Daniels' behavior. It was exactly the type of situation Nicola specialized in. He planned the setup with ruthless simplicity. He acquired a job as a temporary server at a nearby cafe, using a fake identity and paperwork prepared well in advance. The uniform gave him access to the open areas around Daniels' chosen spot. He walked the location during non-peak hours, counting exit routes, security cameras, and possible interference points. The target would be vulnerable during the early afternoon, when shadows were short and crowds provided the perfect cover. But before Nicola could execute the plan, another complication emerged. A third party was watching. A group of Spanish plainclothes officers, previously unaware of Daniels' identity, had picked up chatter after Rafael Mendez leaked certain details to the wrong person. Daniels, once a ghost in Marbella's luxury community, was now a point of interest. The local authorities had no desire to get involved in British or Irish underworld politics, but they couldn't ignore a potential gangland hit occurring in broad daylight. One of the officers approached Daniels' men under the guise of restaurant security, hinting at increased surveillance in the area. Nicola noticed the shift. Daniels' guards started using encrypted earpieces. A black SUV began trailing the convoy from a distance, likely unmarked law enforcement. But Nicola knew how to adapt. He shelved the original date and adjusted the plan once more. He would wait until Daniels dropped his guard, even slightly. The more time passed, the more likely the fear would fade. Nicola understood human behavior. Fear spikes, then dulls. No one can stay in survival mode forever. He resumed the disguise of a waiter multiple times without acting, blending into the background. Each time, he watched Daniels grow more relaxed. Each time, he measured distances, calculated shot angles, and evaluated escape paths. The restaurant's proximity to the boardwalk and nearby marina was key. Within seconds, he could be on a small boat, slipping through the sea traffic before anyone realized what had happened. The hit wasn't just about killing Daniels, it was about control. It was about proving that no matter how rich, careful, or connected he was still a marked man. Daniels believed Marbella was his second chance, but it had become a trap, one that he walked into every time he sipped coffee in the open sun. Nicola was invisible, patient, and perfectly positioned. The plan was now locked in. The boardwalk would be full. The meeting would take place under the same umbrella table. The weapon, small and concealed beneath a folded waiter's towel, would be drawn and fired within 3 seconds. The escape boat would be waiting behind Dock B, and just like that, Nicola would vanish. No warning, no words, just the echo of revenge carried through the warm Spanish breeze. August 3rd arrived like any other summer day in Marbella. Clear skies, high sun, and tourists flooding the boardwalk. The streets were buzzing with the usual rhythm of vacation life. Families strolled past ice cream stands, street performers played guitars under palm trees, and cafes overflowed with chatter. But beneath this postcard-perfect setting, something darker was brewing. At exactly 2:17 p.m., Marbella's calm was shattered. Sean Daniels had returned to his familiar routine. Despite the recent warning, he had resumed public outings. The presence of his 2 Moroccan bodyguards gave him a false sense of control. They traveled in a sleek black convertible, its polished surface gleaming in the sun. Daniels wore a loose linen shirt, sunglasses, and a calm expression. To anyone watching, he looked like just another rich foreigner enjoying the coast. The destination was the marina's upscale yacht club restaurant. It wasn't the first time Daniels met there, and Nicola Vuko knew it wouldn't be the last. From his temporary position at a cafe across the boardwalk, Nicola observed everything through a pair of dark-tinted glasses. He had already memorized the entire layout, entry points, camera angles, foot traffic patterns, and the timing of every server's rotation. He wore a crisp white shirt, black apron, and carried a small tray with folded napkins. Beneath one of them was a compact 9mm pistol with a silencer already fitted. Daniels entered the restaurant and took his usual table, near the glass railing with a view of the docked yachts. One guard stood behind him. The other paced a few steps away, scanning the area with mechanical eyes. Neither noticed Nikola step off the cafe porch and begin his approach. Nikola's movements were precise, practiced, and deliberate. He navigated the tables like any server would, his tray perfectly balanced. He didn't rush. The key was to blend in. As he neared Daniel's table, he adjusted his posture, preparing for the move. Witnesses would later say a waiter dropped a tray, and someone screamed, but no one remembered hearing the shots. That's because Nikola didn't drop the tray. In one fluid motion, he moved beside the table, dropped the tray to the floor to create distraction, and pulled the weapon from underneath. 2 shots rang out soft, muffled cracks that barely cut through the restaurant's background noise. The first bullet struck the bodyguard in the chest before he could turn. He dropped instantly. The second shot went for Daniels but hit him in the shoulder as he ducked, reacting just a second too late. The second guard fired back, his weapon drawn in reflex, but Nikola was already moving. One more shot hit the second guard in the neck, dropping him to the ground in a spray of blood and confusion. Tourists screamed. Chairs overturned. Glass shattered. A baby cried as people scrambled away from the gunfire. Daniels lay on the floor, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping into his white shirt. He was conscious but stunned, staring at the chaos with wide eyes. His empire, his carefully built illusion of safety, was collapsing in real time. Nikola didn't wait to confirm the kill. He followed his escape route as planned, darting through the cafe, tossing the weapon into a bin, and shedding his apron as he moved. He turned a corner, removed his sunglasses, and merged into a group of French tourists heading toward the marina. Within 4 minutes of the hit, Nikola was aboard a small speedboat, its engine already idling. The boat pulled away from the dock unnoticed, blending into the afternoon traffic on the water. By the time emergency services arrived, Daniels had already been moved into a private ambulance called in by one of his panicked associates. Police cordoned off the area, but witnesses provided little useful information. Descriptions of the shooter varied wildly. Some claimed he had a beard, others said he was clean-shaven. Security footage was inconclusive, partially blocked by umbrellas and the sudden crowd surge. Nikola Vuko had done what he was paid for. Daniels was alive, but barely. His invincibility had been shattered. Marbella had seen violence before, but never with such precision, never in such broad daylight. The city's underworld was no longer just a quiet place for hiding. It had become the battleground for something far more ruthless. Sean Daniels was rushed to a private hospital hidden deep within the hills outside Marbella, far from public eyes. His condition was critical but stable. The bullet had missed all vital organs, but the blood loss had been significant. The medical team worked under heavy security, with Tariq El-Aman's men posted at every entrance. Daniels survived the hit, but he was no longer the man who had once ruled the streets of Manchester or Marbella. The wound wasn't just physical, it was reputational. In the world of crime, survival sometimes looks more like defeat. The shooting had sent shockwaves through Marbella's underworld. Word spread fast. Daniels had been targeted in public and nearly killed. The rumors twisted the story further. Some said he'd begged for his life. Others claimed he knew it was coming and failed to stop it. Regardless of the details, one fact remained. Someone had gotten close enough to Sean Daniels to shoot him and vanish without a trace. Fear rippled through his network. Associates went silent. Business partners backed out. Deals froze overnight. Nikola Vuko, the ghost behind the hit, had disappeared as quickly as he had arrived. The speedboat that ferried him from the marina was later found docked in a private cove 20 miles down the coast, abandoned. There were no fingerprints, no footage, no name on any marina log. Spanish police were left with chaos and no leads. They questioned tourists, restaurant staff, even other cafe workers, but no one could give them a solid description. The shooter had blended in perfectly and melted away even better. Rafael Mendez, the man who had tracked Daniels and supplied the McKennas with surveillance, was now in danger himself. He hadn't heard from Nicola since the hit. When Raphael returned to his apartment 3 days later, the door was ajar. Inside, nothing had been stolen, but his laptop was missing, and a dark stain was on the kitchen floor. Neighbors hadn't seen anything. His car was still parked outside, but Raphael was never seen again. Some believed he had been silenced by the McKenna crew to close the loop. Others said Nicola eliminated him as part of the cleanup, but the truth was never confirmed. Rafael Mendez had vanished like so many others in this game. Conor McKenna, the man who ordered the hit, was arrested 2 weeks later in Lisbon during an unrelated police operation involving arms trafficking. His arrest made headlines across Ireland, but no charges were brought against him in connection with the Marbella shooting. Authorities tried to question him about Daniels, but he refused to speak. He smiled in court, paid his bail, and walked free. The message was clear. Even when caught, the players at the top were still untouchable. Daniels, now surrounded by bodyguards and confined to his villa, considered his next move carefully. Revenge was expected, but he didn't act. His network had thinned. His resources were shrinking. He had trusted the silence of exile too much and ignored the quiet threat growing behind him. For the first time in years, Daniels didn't feel like a boss. He felt like prey. Those who once feared him were now questioning his power. The hunter had been hunted, and though he survived, the crown had cracked. In the weeks that followed, the Spanish authorities increased surveillance in Marbella's luxury districts. British and Irish crime figures were quietly pushed out. Offshore accounts were frozen. Raids were conducted. Marbella was no longer a safe haven. It had become unstable territory. Daniels knew it. He packed his bags, secured a new identity, and disappeared once again. Where he went, no one knew for sure. Some said South America, others whispered about Dubai. One rumor even claimed he had turned informant, trading secrets for safety. But no one could confirm anything. His second disappearance was as clean as the first. As for Nicola Vuko, he was never seen again. His name faded into silence, replaced by fear. In the criminal world, his legend grew. The hit on Sean Daniels became a case study, how patience, discipline, and planning could topple even the most secure empires. Marbella learned that day, no one stays safe forever, not even kings.